Hello.
Take it from here, Senor Pellegrino.
Thank
Sorry.
you, sir. I jumped the shark. I went ahead.
You did. You went a little sick there.
I gotta remember that you fire the gun and then I go.
Well, do you see the sign that says you're live?
I do see it.
Oh, then I don't need to do that. I didn't know you saw it. That's why I tell you, because I thought that was just here.
I thought it became a tradition, so I was letting it go.
Oh, God. The fact that we're both so technologically ill-equipped. So it's amazing we get on at all.
I'm surprised it happens. Well, folks, welcome to lucky episode number 13 of the Capitalist Corner. I am the host, Mark Pellegrino, also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my esteemed colleague and co-chairman of the American Capitalist Party, also my co-host here, Michael Liebowitz. Please be sure to follow him on all of his social media, and please watch The Irrational Egoist. You will be smarter for your endeavor. Now, we have a few news items to deal with today, and we sort of have a hard out at 9:30, so folks can be.
Well, I'll stick around.
Oh, you will? Okay, great.
I'll stick around, sure.
So Michael will stick around and entertain you because it's a big news day. I mean, you sent me a lot of stuff. And I don't know that we're going to be able to get through two of them with my stay here, let alone all the things that you want to do.
You know what happened? I woke up at 2 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. So I came upstairs, made a coffee, and sat down and did some reading, and just started firing them off to you.
Do you know what that's called, my friend?
Insomnia?
No.
I don't know.
Age. All right.
Oh, God.
Okay, so Elon Musk strutted into office with this Department of Governmental Efficiency on high, riding a white stallion shining in light, proclaiming to the world that he would be able to cut $2 trillion in waste and inefficiency of the government, waste and fraud. Of course, everybody who knew anything about government, one, this wasn't going to happen, but two, knew that in order to cut $2 trillion, he was going to have to slice into some entitlement programs that the government simply does not have the political will to cut into, particularly Trump, who actually made promises to the American people that he will not touch Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of those entitlement programs that are bankrupting us as we speak and driving us further into debt. Yes, folks, it's not the military-industrial complex. It's really the entitlement programs. The military-industrial complex is a conversation for another time, but it's really the entitlement programs, which they are not going to touch. So here comes Elon Musk traipsing into Washington with his $2 trillion banner, waving in the wind. Then before long, that gets cut down by half to $1 trillion. Now, of course, this seems to happen to people who enter Washington. They go in there with big dreams of doing big things, and then the Washington establishment slaps them down. And even the richest man in the world somehow blinks when they force him to blink. So now he goes down to $1 trillion. Well, at a recent cabinet meeting, he made an announcement of all the wonderful savings that he is saving the taxpayer. And it was revised down to a whopping $150 billion. That's right, folks. That's about 93% less than what he claimed before. And even that number is suspect, according to some reports, for various reasons, which we will probably get into today. Michael, what do you think about, first of all, the Department of Government Efficiency? What do you think about this DOGE concept, first of all? And what do you think about Elon, and what do you think about the job they're doing?
Well, I'm glad to say I never drank the Kool-Aid on this one. And I got to tell you, I find it absolutely ridiculous that there are people out there who call themselves objectivists, call themselves libertarians, who bought into this. I mean, part of our whole shtick is that we don't trust government, right? That when they say things, we tend to doubt them. So when they came along and said, oh, we got this organization, Department of Government Efficiency. First of all, I don't want government to be more efficient, but leave that aside for a second. It wasn't that long ago that we had Simpson Bowles. Remember them? And they came along and they came up with all these ideas that were going to, cut the deficits, and there were poison pills put in. If you didn't do this, then you're going to have these automatic cuts. And then they just said, okay, we don't care. We're going to keep spending anyway. But I think at a maybe a deeper level, I think that a lot of people have a hard time understanding that intelligence doesn't necessarily carry over. For instance, I had a friend in prison who was a very good hair braider, still is, has his own hair braiding business now. He's a very successful entrepreneur. Carlos Robolo. Hey, Carlos, if you're watching. So I assumed that he could go work in the wood shop with my friend Brent, who is an absolutely phenomenal carpenter. So I thought his spatial reasoning skills would carry over from the hair braiding to the woodworking. Well, it didn't. It just didn't. And if you look historically, you look at someone like Einstein, who is like the quintessential symbol of intelligence. Okay, Einstein. The guy was basically a communist, if not an all-out communist. So, I mean, I myself, I have very good rhetorical skills, very good analytical skills, verbal reasoning abilities. You give me a screwdriver, tell me to figure out how to do this or that. I can't do it. So the fact that Elon is a successful entrepreneur was totally irrelevant from the start to whether he could do this or not. But I even will go a little further than that. I question whether the goal was really ever to make a big dent in government, or whether it was just a dog and pony show from the outset to appeal to the rubes out there who believed Trump when he said he's, wants to limit government and shrink government. I don't know. Maybe Trump lied to Elon. I ultimately don't understand. I don't know what goes on there. I do know that this was never going to happen. I'm doubtful that it's even 150 billion that ends up getting cut. And then, you have to ask, because the goalpost shifts, right, amongst the supporters of these things. Will say, well, 150 billion in cuts is better than nothing. Sure, all things remaining equal, 150 billion dollars in cuts would be better. But all things aren't remaining equal. What harms have you caused in the meantime by taking the slash and burn approach to cutting these 150 billion dollars? How many court cases are now in the works that are going to cost money themselves? So I think it was doomed to fail from the beginning. I also predicted from the beginning that eventually these two will have a falling out. I still think so. There's been slight signs that it's coming. We'll see in the coming months if my prediction was correct. But I wouldn't doubt at all if in 6 months to a year from now we have Elon out there saying that Trump just doesn't know what he's doing, as many others who have worked with him had said. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah. So, do you think this issue with putting these corporate types at the head of government comes from a conflation in the minds of the American population between corporations and businesses and government? They think that the government is like a corporation. It should be run like a corporation, and if it were run like a corporation, it would be much more efficient. But the government seems to have very different incentives than a corporation. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? And I also want to say one thing before you answer that. The savings that Elon Musk claimed he was saving the American taxpayer are estimated savings now, folks. This isn't even dyed in the wool, ironclad stuff that we can count on as savings, which would likely be anyway passed on to some other programmer used to shore up Hegseth's $1 trillion budget for the military. It'll shore up something else like it always does in Washington. But these are estimated savings, so they're not even actual savings yet, and they're supposed to be realized in fiscal year 2026, which for Americans is an awful long time to be, in the mist about stuff like this. Americans need lower prices now, lower inflation now. They need higher living conditions now, right now, better wages now. All of this stuff I don't think can be achieved by what they're doing. But anyway, this conflation of government and business, do you think this has to do with why they think putting businessmen in charge of government will somehow make it more efficient?
Well, sure. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong in this equation. The believing that Donald Trump, for instance, was this great businessman, when from everything I've seen, he was a TV character. I mean, I get it. He was born with money. He did some investing. He also bankrupted many casinos. The banks bailed him out. He seems to be a good marketer. The P.T. Barnum of our age, if you will. He's very good at getting his name out there, that sort of thing. So that has to be questioned. But even beyond that, the idea that because somebody knows how to market real estate or knows how to engineer high-tech automobiles or, market various products, that does not equate to understanding or having a sound philosophy, for instance, of individual rights or ethics or understanding economics. There's a difference between running a business and understanding the economy as a whole. The great Ludwig von Mises told his wife, when they were getting married, I may study money, but I'm never going to make much of it, because he could understand the economy as a whole, but didn't mean he could be a good businessman or a good investor.
Same with Hamilton. Same with lots of people who understand systems but don't necessarily understand how to apply them.
Right. So you start off with different ideas that have to shape these things from the get-go. But then it's also, when you own your own company, you can basically do what you want. But in our system, you have, rightly so, checks and balances. You can't just do whatever you want. You can't just come in and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do all these wonderful things. You have to sometimes go through Congress. The courts are going to weigh in on it. So it's just not the same thing. It really isn't. And I'm not opposed to a businessman or anybody else being president. What I'm more concerned with is the philosophy of the people in charge, their understanding of ethics, their understanding of economics, their understanding of the Constitution, our constitutional system. And I have seen nothing over the years to indicate that Trump understands any of these things, and probably neither does Elon.
I mean, I have to agree, but one of the answers I was sort of looking for is that there's different incentives for the businessman and the politician. They're pretty much polar opposites. Let's leave aside the fact that business is the realm of exchange, production exchange, and government is the realm of force, which automatically puts them in two completely different universes. Their incentives, the incentive of the welfare state and the incentive of a entrepreneur attempting to streamline his business to make it more efficient and cost effective, are completely different. The smaller and more efficient he makes his workforce, the wealthier he becomes. The more productive he becomes, the wealthier he becomes, and the wealthier his workers become, the wealthier we become. It's the exact opposite incentivization for the people in government. The more they grow their business, the more people they attach to it, the larger the bureau becomes, the more prestige it has in Washington, and the more funding they get. So there's actually an incentive in Washington to grow, to get big, to get fat, and to get and to leech off of the American people more, because you're seen as more of a necessity, not to streamline. And look, let's face it, Elon went in there at first with the idea that he was going to take a chainsaw like Javier Milei to the apparatus of government. And once Trump saw the pushback from the left, and not only the left, some of his own constituencies who have become dependent on government programs, and their fears, which to some degree are valid since they're now dependent on these programs, he had to push back and tell Elon, no chainsaw, use a scalpel. Well, this seems like less than a scalpel, my friend. This seems like, what would you call, what's smaller than a scalpel? A microscopic rendering that in itself is hyperbole. When you read a little bit further down into this article, they talk about quote unquote claims of savings that Musk has made that really aren't savings at all. They're just describing programs that may have come into existence but now aren't. But no money has actually changed hands. There was no money transfer. So these were probable projects that are now off the books, and so he's claiming to have saved money. But there's no cuts. It doesn't seem like there's any real cuts to speak of. In fact, I think at the bottom of the article somewhere it said, when push comes to shove, the actual cuts amount to something like 99 billion. So we've gone from 2 trillion to 1 trillion, from 1 trillion to 150 billion, to an actual number of $99 billion. That is well under 1% of what the government spends.
And Elon is not disputing this decline in savings. He's admitting it. It's not as if it's the New York Times coming out and claiming it, and Elon saying this is fake news. Elon is admitting that it's down to 150 billion. And then there's people that are speculating that it's even less than that.
Right, and I agree with the speculations. They're probably true. Yeah, and I'm not claiming that Elon has picked up the virus of Trump and is now lying and given to hyperbole as a habit. But certainly he can't achieve what he needs to achieve because in part the political culture just isn't ready for it. And worse, it's not just the political culture, it's the people who aren't willing to work with DOGE, in the sense that we understand we're in a debt crisis. We understand that this crisis is going to inflate currency. It's going to bring down our standard of living. It's going to siphon off our productive capacity to pay for this debt, and that it has to be taken care of immediately. No, we're more interested in the benefits that we're getting from this spoil system democracy, and we'd rather keep those. And that's unfortunate. Any final words to say about this? Because I wanted to get to something that I'm fangirling over Jeffrey A. Tucker, and I just wanted to get to something.
Okay. Just quickly, Ian Gilmore says, how much of the savings was done the right way? It could all be undone in a second by a new president. That's very true, because a lot of it's just executive order stuff, can be gone in an instant. And given what I anticipate coming from the economy, I think we probably will have a leftist president next time. I don't know for sure because anything could happen, but I think that's the direction we're headed. So go on and get to Mr. Jeffrey Tucker.
Well, we'll see. We'll also see what happens in 2026, because I'm interested in seeing what happens in those midterm elections, because Trump has done some insane things. I mean, he's basically attacked the entire world, including our allies, with tariffs, and alienated everybody. And in a certain sense has given China a great deal of power to go around to our economic allies in Asia, from Vietnam to Japan to Korea to Malaysia, and to start consolidating power for the Chinese, because he's alienated them all. He's alienated everybody. He thinks that I think he's banking on the fact that our economy is the least worst off in the world, and he's prepared to put our lives on the line to test that theory and see who blinks first. I think it's a terrible way to go, and I think if he wanted to start decoupling from China, there are infinitely more ways to do that, because I'm not against decoupling from China, particularly with respect to military materiel and things that are of sensitive nature with respect to national security. But it's got to be done intelligently. It's got to be done intelligently, since they have a great, their manufacturing capacities. They manufacture something like 80% of the world's goods. I mean, they're a massive exporter. And although we may be the number one importer of their goods, we still don't have the infrastructure to take on what we will be missing, particularly with the rare earth minerals, which I think was a Xi Jinping kick to the American collective testes, by banning those products to us, because we are dependent on those for lots and lots and lots of industries. So Trump has to get off of his instinctual, I do things by feeling mode, and
his feels,
and start thinking his way through these proposals that he's making. Jeffrey Tucker sort of echoes this in a tweet that was posted on the 17th of April. It says, there are hardly any influential Trump backers, donors, or other stakeholders who had such high hopes for this administration who are not in private pained by how Trump is prioritizing and has prioritized and conducted his trade war. For most American manufacturers, it means only one thing: higher taxes and prices for essential inputs. It's so bad that it now threatens devastation. That is not what they hoped this administration would bring. Jeffrey Tucker is absolutely right. Do you find any disagreement with this? I mean, I see lots of mom and pop businesses that are.
I have a lot to say. So first, Jeffrey Tucker wrote a piece one time It was called How to Live a Happy Life in an Irrational Society. He wrote it for the Foundation of Economic Education. I read it while I was incarcerated, and this article helped me out through some very difficult times. Great article. Jeffrey Tucker was also a guest on a talk show that I was a regular guest on, and I had been listening to him because I listened to the show, and I didn't realize that he had written the article.
Wow.
Then when I had I've got my own podcast, I interviewed Jeffrey about the history of libertarianism. Jeffrey gave me one of the best lines I've ever had. He said, I think he said 3/5 or 4/5 of Rothbard's brain is all Ayn Rand.
Yes.
And he also said the Mises Caucus should call themselves the shitpost meme caucus. So he said a lot of things that I've liked. Jeffrey sees the world differently than I do. He's far more of a populist, far more, we've got to beat the elites kind of thing. So while he's criticized Trump, he's also offered some support for him, at the intersection, the intersections of where I would go the other way. He goes this way. I don't know if intersection was the right word. I don't really care. So anyway, when I saw this morning, I posted, how could they not know? These donors, how could they not know that this was going to happen? If not this, something else that was just as bad. The evidence has been there for a long time about what Trump is. So Jeffrey responded to me, and I'm going to tie this into one of the commenters. Jeffrey says, well, Kamala wasn't an option. And so Nicole Hingle in the comments says, I hope you're wrong about the leftist president, Michael. And there's like this assumption that people that share our views have, a lot of people have this assumption that if you put an R next to the candidate's name, that he's automatically better than the one with the D next to the name. I'm not suggesting that anybody should have voted for Kamala. I can't vote because I'm a convicted felon, but even if I could have voted, I wouldn't have voted for either of them. And my response to Jeffrey was, okay, that if Kamala is not a choice, that doesn't mean you have to choose Trump. And furthermore, it still doesn't explain this. They're angry about what's happening. This should have been anticipated. Out of all the things that Trump lies about, tariffs is the one thing that he has been consistently for his entire life. And before I turn it over to you, I just want to say I did an excellent interview that's now up on my podcast, The Rational Egoist, with economic historian Philip Magnus, all about tariffs. We get into Trump and the whole bit.
Ooh, I wish we could link that. I wish we had a producer who could link that, unless you know how to link that stuff.
I haven't got the slightest idea.
Well, we got to find that and link it because I think it's very relevant.
I can link it in the comments. No, YouTube doesn't even allow that. I don't know. I can link it in the comments on X.
Our kingdom for a producer. Well, look, I wanted to say something about this. First of all, yeah, Jeffrey Tucker is not God, but he's close to it to me. So I have to say that, look, this last election, I voted for no one. I voted in the local elections, and I left the presidential part blank because I couldn't stomach the libertarian candidate, and I could stomach the establishment candidates even less. And certainly the other fringe candidates are far, far, far afield from it, I believe. And so, folks, it is possible to leave that section blank, and if the American Capitalist Party had its way, balloting would be there would be a none of the above option, so that whoever got into power would realize that they didn't get in by a majority. There's a substantial minority of people that disagree with their policies, and a none of the above option would certainly clue them into that, so they can no longer think they have a mandate. But look, I think people with Trump derangement syndrome also consider him to be playing 4D chess. They always use that term with Trump.
Oh my God.
Right? I mean, it's as if the more idiotic stuff you say, it's so off the wall and so crazy and so inconceivable that a person would say something like this, that you have to be like 5 levels above the average person to be saying stuff like this, because no one in their right minds would. And so they just say he's playing 4D chess. And a lot of them, you hear them saying, this is the art of the deal. He's using this as leverage in order to bring people to the table to make the trading field more equitable. Now, look, first of all, it's a bad policy, but there's two conflicting stories that are coming out. And I believe the second story more than the first. The first is that he's using this as leverage to bring people to the table. So they bring their tariffs down to zero. We bring our tariffs down to zero. And there you go. You have a free trading environment. The other story is that he's trying to bring manufacturing back to America, which means essentially he's trying to bring us back to the 19th century and early 20th centuries. Because we're so wealthy now, we can outsource that stuff. Labor is more expensive here. You know, our life is richer here. We don't have to manufacture that stuff at home. We can farm it out to other people who have capital in labor. And actually, they're helped by that kind of capital movement. We're helped by that kind of capital movement. It's not a bad thing. We're not enslaving people. It's not hurting anybody. It's making the world a better place. But he wants to deprive those folks in China and Asia and Africa and all those places, India, where these places, where this labor is being farmed out to, and bring it back to America. Essentially bringing us back in time where we have no infrastructure to actually act on this new vacuum that's been created by the tariff. So rare earth metals is one perfect example. We don't have the infrastructure. The Environmental Protection Agency will not allow us to, at this point of its development, to mine the kind of rare earth minerals we need, first off, let alone to refine them, which is what China does for 90% of the rare earth metals out there. So he's literally leaving a vacuum that'll take 5 to 10 years to fill. That does not make for economic prosperity. And that's where he's actually going. So let's take him at his word, where that's where he's going. Let's try to understand that we don't need to do that in order to be wealthy. Trade deficits don't matter at all. I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. I'm better off for it. I have a trade deficit with Apple. I'm better off for it. I have a trade deficit with my pet store. My dog is better off for it. My cat is better off for it. This is just the nature of exchanges, folks. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game the way Trump is making it out to be. Unfortunately, that's the way politicians look at everything. And because he's a businessman doesn't mean he doesn't look at things in that fashion himself. I wouldn't really call him a businessman. I only got 3 minutes before I have to split, so I don't even know if I could deal with the next thing that I wanted to deal with, which was with the banning Chinese student visas. Maybe you can start talking about that, and I could leave quiet.
I actually had something else planned to talk about.
All right, do your thing.
So, Mark is going to be taking off any minute, and I'm telling you, I can see how many people are watching. If that number plummets, we're gonna have serious issues, people. serious issues. What I actually would like to do now that Mark's taken off is anybody in the comment section, feel free to ask a question, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be about anything we've talked about today. Could be about the American Capitalist Party, objectivism. If you want to ask me something personal, go ahead. I don't really mind. I'll pretty much answer anything. So that's what I'd like to do. And if nobody asks any questions, I'll just talk about what I want to talk about, which is my favorite subject, ethics.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Hey, you know, Ashley shrugged in our group did ask one time that if we would ever do just a straight Q&A, do a show with a straight Q&A.
Sure. Why don't we do this right now? We'll make it up. We'll do it every Friday. We'll be nothing but Q&A.
Every Friday, nothing but Q&A, folks. So you guys out there, I have less than a minute to stay on. You guys out there listening, every Friday, bring your questions to the table. Ask us anything, almost anything. I can't say anything because, you know, anything, especially if it's related to objectivism, especially if it's related to current events. That's sort of what we want to go into. But I'll answer questions also about the entertainment industry if you want to hear them. But we'd prefer to keep it focused. So, Michael, I do have to go, but it's been a pleasure as usual. Take the helm, my friend. I know I
will, and I'll get you this stuff later on. Once I get off the air, I have to go do my actual job. And so I'll get you all the stuff later, and I will try. We had a good suggestion from Bonnie to put the link to my podcast in the description, so that I think that might work. I'm going to give that a shot.
I think I've heard techies say that the link is in the description or whatever show description. So look there.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, we'll get this straight, folks. Eventually, we'll get this straight. All right.
All right.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Have a great episode 13. Peace.
Take care, Mark. All right. So Equal to Reality asks, since getting out, what is the furthest you have been out of the USA? I haven't been anywhere outside of the USA. The furthest I have actually been is San Diego, California. It was my first time on an airplane. It was an awesome experience. I went out there to spend time with my friend, the objectivist, Mr. James Stevens Valiant. It was absolutely an amazing experience. I mean, since I've been out, I've been to Manhattan several times. I've been to Brooklyn, Queens. I've been to all the boroughs except for Staten Island. I've seen the Bronx Zoo, the Statue of Liberty. It's been an absolutely amazing thing for me. And the same day that I saw Alexander Hamilton's grave, I ate at the tavern where George Washington bid farewell to his troops. I've also been to Gettysburg. I've been to the Lexington battlefield. It's all just been an extraordinary experience for me. I really, really like it. Thanks for the question, Equal to Reality. Nicole Hingle asked where I'm originally from. I'm originally from Wethersfield, Connecticut. So I grew up in a low-income government housing in Wethersfield, Connecticut till I was 13. And then we were evicted. So I moved in with my grandmother, but that was also in Wethersfield, Connecticut. And of course, when I was 21, I was sent to prison. So I wasn't just sent there. I mean, I, committed an abundance of crime. So I was sent there. They didn't just come and say, here, go. The question from Ina KR. She says, or he says, objectivists in fiction pride themselves in producing. Why, in your view, is it not good to produce? Production is one of the virtues. I think it's absolutely vital to human survival to produce. So I don't know what would ever give the impression that I'm opposed to production. I think production is absolutely vital. So I don't know. Oh, I got another job to do. See, what I do for a living out here is I do real estate title searches. So I just was told another title that I have to do. So when I finish this, that's what I'm going to do. So if there's no other questions, I want to just get this. And if somebody asks a question, I certainly will answer it. I think Katrin says, she says putting the link in the description should work. So I see a lot of arguments, a lot of political arguments, debates, if you want to call them, whatever, where they make ethical arguments. What they don't do is ever attempt to justify their morality. So, for instance, they'll say, well, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. But they don't justify their conclusions. Sometimes I actually agree with what they're saying, but there's no attempt to justify it. And I think that Ayn Rand showed us the way, that if you come across somebody and you're in a debate with somebody and they're making ethical proclamations, the question to ask is, by what standard? And it stops them dead in their tracks. I mean, they may try to rationalize, often they insult, but what they never have is an actual answer. And that is both scary, but it's also an opportunity, because we can explain why it's necessary to have criteria by which to judge moral behavior, whether behavior is moral or immoral, right or wrong. And we could then explain that life is the standard, human life is the standard of moral value, and we can actually open up discussions that way. So I think that Ayn Rand has showed us the way. So there's a question here. If I had, I think that says 25,000 pounds to go anywhere in the world, all expenses paid, where would I like to go? I would like to go to Rome. I don't think I can because of the whole convicted felon thing. So my options are very limited about where in the world that I can go, but Rome would definitely be someplace I would love to see. I would love to see the Colosseum. I would love to eat there. Oh, everything. The city's just beautiful. From what I've seen, on TV, obviously, but that's where I would go. Race Jacobson said, how did I fall into that line of work? A friend of mine who is a police officer who used to chase me around when I was a kid, he got me in there. Nicole Hingle says, when did I become interested in Ayn Rand? That's very interesting, and I might as well tell the whole story because, well, I'm the only host here, and I can talk about whatever I want. So one day when I was 18 years old, I was driving my car, and the engine seized. It seized in the fast lane on the highway. And it was one of the scariest experiences that I've ever had in my life. And I've had guns pulled on me. So you can imagine how scary this was. Before the engine seized, there was a smell that emanated, throughout the car. So flash forward a month or so, and I was driving my mother's car, and I thought I smelled something. Now, I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. I tend to catastrophize, although I've gotten much, much better with that. So because I smelled that smell, I pulled over immediately. And I had my pit bull with me. He was just a puppy at the time. And a guy pulled over, and he gave me a ride to go pick up some water to cool down the car. And we got to talking, and he was a multi-level marketer for Amway products. He didn't tell me that at the time. He just talked to me about his business. So I ended up meeting with him, and I got involved with him for a little while with the Amway business. And part of the Amway system is a teaching system called Worldwide Dream Building. Within Worldwide Dream Building, they have books and they have tapes. There's like 70 books, self-help books, motivational books, books on selling, that sort of thing, self-help books. So, I only lasted in that for a couple months, and I ended up going to prison. While I was in prison, I decided to change my life. And one of the things that I remembered from the Amway business is they taught that if you want to change your life, you have to change the way you think and the people you hang around with. And the primary way you can change the way you think is by reading. So I contacted this guy and I said, hey, can I buy these books from you? Will you send them to me off the teaching system list? And he said, sure. So, there were 70 books on the list. I think I read them all. Maybe missed one or two. But anyway, one of the books on there was Milton Friedman's Free to Choose. That was the first economics book I ever read. And reading it, I absolutely fell in love with economics. Also included on that list was Frederick Bastiat's The Law. And he made the moral case, or the individual rights case, for liberty. And I thought his argument at the time was simply impenetrable. I now see some flaws with it. The fact that he doesn't have an antecedent theory of morality that shapes his theory of rights. But nevertheless, it's still a sound book. It's very well written. Anyway, so on the back of that book was an address for a place called the Foundation for Economic Education. At that time, it was on Irvington on the Hudson, New York. So I wrote to them and I said, listen, I'm incarcerated. I'm very interested in economics. Would you be willing to send me, any information you have? And they gave me a year's free subscription to their magazine, Ideas on Liberty. Inside their magazine, Ideas on Liberty, was a place called Laissez-Faire Books. So I wrote to them and got a catalog. So I started to order books from them. In the meantime, I got another book called The Triumph of Liberty by a guy named Jim Powell. In the book, The Triumph of Liberty, the book was 64 mini biographies of people that helped to advance the cause of liberty. One of the people in there was a woman named Ayn Rand. So I knew who she was. And in that biography, they told the story of how Atlas Shrugged came about her argument with Isabel Patterson and how that led to Atlas Shrugged and, what the story was about. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I really wanted to read it. And subsequently, I received my Laissez-Faire Books catalog. And in my Laissez-Faire Books catalog, they had something, I think they called it like the package for liberty. It was like 5 or 6 books that were liberty classics. Mises's Human Action was in there, Discovery of Freedom by Rose Wilder Lane, Our Enemy the State by Albert J. Nock, and Atlas Shrugged. And I read Atlas Shrugged, and, I found a lot of it compelling. I was still young, and I wasn't very educated. I mean, I only just started reading, 2 years earlier, and I'm a high school dropout. I didn't make it past my freshman year, but I still found it fascinating. So I started to order other books from Laissez-Faire Books that had to do with Ayn Rand. And I also was ordering books on logic, for instance, How to Think Straight by Antony Flew. And the economic stuff was also helping with my thinking. So I was able to analyze things, see if things made sense, ideas made sense. So as I continued to read through Ayn Rand, I would argue with her as I do with every other book that I'm reading. I'm arguing with it and I'm trying to, puncture holes in what she's saying. And I was largely unable to do that. And so that's where I came across Ayn Rand. And that's ultimately how I became an objectivist. Now, I got out of prison and I didn't call myself an objectivist because I didn't care to argue with anybody about what an objectivist is or whether I'm an objectivist. And my friend Jim Valiant, after reading my book, View from a Cage, what the hell is it called now? A View from a Cage, My Transformation from Convict to Crusader for Liberty. So after reading my book, Jim Valiant, and through conversation, he told me, no, Michael, you're an objectivist. And he convinced me that I should identify as such. Now, one of the most rewarding things about being free is I've been able to interview and talk to so many of the people whose books I read while I was in prison. Just this morning, I was exchanging emails with the wonderful Sheldon Richman, who, I'd read his articles for years in prison. So it's been an absolutely phenomenal experience. I'm very fortunate to be able to do it. I'm very fortunate to be able to share this stuff with people like you. So do we have any other questions? I'm very happy to answer anything you got. Ray says, he said, I don't seem like a real estate kind of guy. I'm not. Ray, I need money kind of guy. And given that this, I'm trying to build this into a business, the podcasting thing, that for everything I understand takes about 5 years. So I need to have some money to feed myself in the meantime. I'm very fortunate that a good friend of mine supports me and allows me to live in his home for free because he believes in me and he thinks I'm going to turn this podcasting thing into a success. And he doesn't want me to distract myself with working a 9 to 5 somewhere else. So I was able to find part-time work doing real estate title searches. And that helps me to feed myself, put gas in the car, that sort of thing. My dream business is being a talk show host. My friend just chimed in and asked me, are the dogs therapeutic? At times they're very therapeutic. At times they're a monumental pain in the ass. We have 5 dogs and they sometimes don't shut up, and you tell them to shut up and they don't listen. They can be a big drag on the day. By and large, I love the dogs. They're absolutely wonderful. They're amazing. We have 2 pit bulls, so you can imagine, and 3 other dogs. And one of the other dogs is, a medium to large size dog and is crazier than the pit bulls. This dog, every time you go to pet her, she wants to climb you, and it doesn't stop. Even when she gets to the top, she attempts to keep climbing. So my dream job actually is talk show host. I love to communicate. I love to communicate ideas. I love to debate ideas. I always have, but I never thought that I would have an opportunity to do this. But while incarcerated, my friend Brent McCall and I wrote a book called Down the Rabbit Hole: How the Culture of Corrections Encourages Crime. From that, I ended up a regular guest on the Todd Feinberg show. The Todd Feinberg show, he's on leave right now from the show. But when he was hosting it, especially at that time, it was the #1 political talk show in the state. So I got a regular slot on the show. He interviewed me one time for the book, Down the Rabbit Hole. And after the first interview, he said to me, Michael, would you like to be a regular on the show? So I said, yeah, of course. I was so excited. And then I went and locked up and I said to myself, oh my God, what the hell am I going to talk about every week now that I'm a regular on the show? But it wasn't difficult to come up with topics to talk about. And I really enjoyed it. And I found that I was very good at it. And, I asked him, do you think that I have a future in this business? He'd been in the business, 30, 40 years. And he told me absolutely. And when I got out, he actually let me go into the studio and co-host his show with him. The first interview I ever did, I interviewed Ankar Gate from the Ayn Rand Institute. So I really love doing this. I love talking. I love sharing ideas. So this is no doubt, the path that's open to me. Now, whether it has to be via podcast, or maybe I get a job at a radio station, or maybe it's this show right here, co-hosting with Mark, I just want to communicate ideas, and I want to make a difference in people's lives, to make this a better world, because ultimately I live in this world. So if the world's better, it's better for me. And that's great. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I think it's Kaya. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. It might be Kaya Prigmore, says she has a dog like that. He barks at the wind. Yeah, it's a situation here. It's especially right now, because my friend is working outside the house. So he's building a waterfall. That's one of the jobs he does. He builds waterfalls, and they're absolutely amazing. I'll be posting photos of it soon to Facebook and X. So he's out there and he's making all kinds of racket. So the dogs are hearing it. They start yelling and screaming, barking. And I'm trying to do things. I talk and think for a living. That's what I do. So I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to read. I'm, trying to think about the arguments on both sides of things. And you've got this yelping. One dog yelps. The other one's got a ferocious bark. And it can be a bit distracting. But I wouldn't change it. I love the dogs. They're absolutely fantastic. Equal to Reality asked me if I could go back in time to one moment that would prevent my going inside and even lead to your current path. Is there one, and would you do it? I've thought about that so much, Equal to Reality, and the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. Let's say I go back to the one moment where I committed the crime. If I don't commit that crime, I'm going to commit another crime, and I'm going to end up in the same spot or dead. Ultimately, my thought patterns, my behavior patterns were built up over many, many, many years. There's no one instance in my life that I could alter that would alter who I became. Everything would have to change. I ultimately had to change my thought patterns, my entire character structure, my belief in right and wrong, my willingness to do what was right, even when it's difficult. So there's just not that instance that would ever have occurred. So I have to say no. And some people would say, might say, well, Jesus, you've hurt people. Why wouldn't you change that? Well, if I could take it back, all the people I've ever hurt, I would do that, of course. But the problem is, if I did that, if you just magically made that go away, then the things that I'm doing, I would have ended up doing something else and somebody else would have got hurt, maybe worse. So Ray says, alternate timeline scenarios are not always a productive use of your time because there's only the one reality, the one that already happened. And that, of course, is absolutely correct. Katrin Kohler says, in Objectivism, we value rational dedication and pride in our work, but how does one know when commitment crosses into self-sacrifice? When is it rational to push back and protect one's own well-being? Well, Katrin, there's some answers that I don't know because I don't know the particular situation. I know that I constantly engage in introspection. I constantly check my behavior against reality, against my values, against my principles. I ask friends, what do you think I'm wrong on this? I have no problem taking criticism. I'm not infallible, so I know I'll screw up. And when I do, I just admit it and try to fix it. I mean, it's not the end of the world. A guy once gave me a great compliment. I used to do in prison this program called the Alternative to Violence Project. I was a facilitator. And one day I was facilitating the group and I messed up. I messed up the exercise. And I said, oh, well, I messed that up. And, but this is the way it's supposed to go. And I moved on. And a friend said to me, wow, man, you just admitted it and moved on. And it was a good compliment, but it was also kind of striking to me because how many people are there that don't do that, that just wallow in it, that won't admit that they're wrong? And that's just not a successful way to live. You just can't build a life living that way. Nicole Hingle says, lunch break over. Bye for now. Bye, Nicole. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you'll check it out later on and, see what was said after you left the show. Race is getting some compliments in the chat here. Race deserves it. Race is great. He always has something to say on Twitter, Facebook, X, whatever it is. So I'm very grateful for Race. I'm very grateful for everybody that tunes in, that gives their input. It's very fantastic. And I don't want to say humbling. I hate when people say that. Don't you hate it? Like somebody wins a prize or wins an award and they say, oh, this is so humbling. Why? Why would you be humbled by success? That doesn't make any sense to me. It seems kind of ridiculous. Anyone disagree with that? Anyone think that you should be humbled by success? Oh, well, no one's chiming in. So I'm going to say that everybody agrees with me because I have no contrary information. All right. I'm going to close this out because I've got to get to work and I really have nothing more to say for the day. But I'm going to give you the capitalist thought of the day. Ayn Rand in her philosophy of objectivism. Objectivism ultimately is a self-help philosophy. It teaches us how to think rationally, how to discover what's ethical, what ethical behaviors or what ethical principles to adopt. And if we do these things, if we put in the work, and it's a lot of work, it's not easy, but if we do things, if we commit to reason, if we learn the importance of self-esteem, if we adopt a purpose for our lives, if we're honest and productive, think independently, if we do these things, the odds are in our favor that we will have better lives. So for now, I'm going to go, but please check out my podcast, The Rational Egoist. Check out the American Capitalist Party, and be sure to check me out on Facebook and X. Thank you very much, everybody. You have a wonderful day.